The restaurant glowed with afternoon light, the kind that softened edges and made everything look more forgiving than it really was. Sunbeams spilled through tall glass windows, warming polished tables and catching the slow movement of dust in the air. Conversations floated gently, forks tapped plates, and soft music played in the background. It was the sort of place where people came to feel important without being loud about it. In that space moved a young woman in a pale blue dress and a simple apron, her steps careful, her posture calm. Her name was Valeria, and to most of the people in the room, she was invisible. She had learned how to move that way. Not too fast, not too slow. Not drawing attention, not asking for patience. Years of working had taught her how to read moods before words were spoken, how to sense irritation, entitlement, and indifference with a single glance. She had learned when to smile, when to step back, and when to stay silent. What she had not learned, and what no one should ever have to learn, was how to prepare for humiliation delivered without warning. Bruno sat near the center of the room, his jacket draped over the chair as if he owned more than just his table. He spoke loudly, laughed loudly, and complained loudly. From the moment he arrived, he treated the staff like background noise. When Valeria approached to take his order, he barely looked at her. When she returned with his drink, he frowned as if she had offended him simply by existing. By the time the food arrived, his patience had vanished completely. He complained about the temperature, the presentation, the timing. His voice rose with each sentence, drawing glances from nearby tables. Valeria listened, hands folded, eyes lowered, apologizing softly and offering to fix whatever he disliked. She reached for his plate to take it back to the kitchen, and that was when it happened. In one careless, angry motion, Bruno grabbed at her dress, not to steady himself, not by accident, but out of pure frustration. The fabric tore sharply, the sound cutting through the restaurant like a crack of thunder. The noise seemed louder than the music, louder than the clinking glasses, louder than the conversations that instantly died. Time slowed. Valeria froze, her breath caught somewhere between her chest and her throat. Half her dress hung torn, exposing more than fabric. It exposed vulnerability, dignity, and pain all at once. For a brief second, no one moved. Bruno looked at her, then at the torn dress, and instead of apologizing, instead of showing shame, he smirked. It was a small expression, but it carried something ugly. In his mind, she was just a waitress, replaceable, powerless, someone who would clean up the mess and move on because she had no other choice. Heat rushed to Valeria's face. Not just embarrassment, but something deeper and heavier. A memory of every time she had been underestimated, every time she had been spoken over, every time she had chosen silence to keep peace. Her hands trembled as she tried to hold the fabric together, her fingers pressing the torn edges as if that could somehow fix what had been broken. For a moment, she considered walking out, leaving the apron on the floor, stepping into the sunlight, and never coming back. Letting the world believe she was small if it made the pain stop. But as quickly as the thought came, something else rose inside her. Not anger, not revenge, resolve. She straightened her back. She lifted her head. Her eyes shimmered, not with tears, but with a quiet strength that surprised even her. She adjusted her grip on the dress, nodded once, and calmly said she would bring a replacement dish. Then she turned and walked toward the kitchen, each step steady despite the weight pressing on her chest. What she did not see was the man seated near the window, watching everything. He had been there long before Bruno raised his voice. He wore simple clothes, nothing that caught attention. No expensive watch, no tailored suit. To anyone else, he was just another customer enjoying lunch. But his eyes were sharp, focused, and filled with something deeper than curiosity. His name was Esteban. He had noticed Valeria the moment she entered the room. Not because of how she looked, but because of how she carried herself. The quiet care in her movements, the patience in her voice. He recognized it because he knew her better than anyone else in the world. He had watched her choose this job, had understood her reasons even when others would not. She wanted to stay grounded. She wanted to understand people, to remember where she came from, to build something meaningful without losing herself. Esteban had watched Bruno's behavior from the beginning. He had felt the tension rise, had seen the entitlement in the man's posture, the way he spoke down to others. When the dress tore, something cold settled in Esteban's chest. Not rage, but certainty. A line had been crossed. Still, he stayed seated, not because he didn't care, but because he trusted Valeria. He trusted her strength, her dignity, her ability to stand on her own. He knew she did not need rescuing, but he also knew there were moments when silence became permission, and this was one of them. Valeria returned from the kitchen with a fresh plate, her movements just as calm as before. Some guests avoided her eyes, embarrassed by what they had witnessed. Others looked at her with new awareness, seeing her not as part of the scenery, but as a person. Bruno, however, leaned back in his chair, satisfied, unaware that the ground beneath his confidence was beginning to crack as Valeria placed the plate down. Esteban stood, but he did not rush. He did not raise his voice. He simply stood, and somehow the room felt different immediately. Conversations faded again, not from shock, but from instinct. Authority did not announce itself. It arrived quietly and stayed. Esteban walked toward the table, his steps measured. He looked first at Valeria, his gaze steady and filled with respect. No pity, no apology, just understanding. Then he turned to Bruno that he spoke calmly, asking if Bruno understood what he had just done. Bruno laughed at first, brushing it off, making a joke about clumsiness and cheap fabric. Esteban listened without interrupting, letting the words pile up until they collapsed under their own weight. Then Esteban spoke again, still calm, still even. He explained that dignity did not come from money, that power did not come from arrogance, and that the woman Bruno had humiliated was not powerless, not invisible, and certainly not alone. He introduced himself, not with titles or wealth, but simply as Valeria's husband. The words settled heavily in the air. Bruno's expression changed. The smirk faded. Confusion crept in, followed by unease. Esteban continued, not boasting, not threatening, but stating facts about respect, about accountability, about how wealth meant nothing if it was not matched by humility. The room felt warmer, brighter, as if the sunlight itself had shifted. People listened closely, not because of who Esteban was, but because of what he represented. Calm strength, quiet justice. Bruno shrank back in his chair, suddenly aware of every eye on him. The confidence he had carried so easily began to crumble. There was nothing Esteban needed to do beyond speaking the truth. The mirror had been held up, and Bruno could not look away from his own reflection. Valeria stood silently beside them, her hands now steady. She felt something lift inside her, not because someone had defended her, but because someone had seen her fully, because the truth she had lived quietly was finally visible. When Esteban finished speaking, he turned back to Valeria. He asked softly if she was ready to go. She nodded, adjusting her dress one last time. As they walked toward the exit together, the room seemed to breathe again. People watched them leave with a new understanding, not of wealth, but of grace, not of power, but of kindness. Outside, the sunlight felt warm on Valeria's skin. She smiled, not because the pain had vanished, but because it no longer defined her. She had stood, she had been seen, and somewhere behind them, arrogance had met its mirror, exactly as it always does. They stepped out into the bright afternoon, the door closing softly behind them, but the moment did not end there. Inside the restaurant, the silence lingered like an aftertaste, and Bruno sat frozen, his appetite gone, his sense of importance stripped away. The torn dress was no longer the focus. What remained was the exposure of character, and it weighed far heavier than embarrassment ever could. Outside, Valeria paused for a moment, letting the sunlight warm her face. The street buzzed with ordinary life, cars passing, people talking, the world moving forward as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Yet for her, something had shifted. She exhaled slowly, feeling the tension leave her shoulders. Esteban stood beside her, close but not overbearing, allowing her the space to feel everything she needed to feel. He did not rush to speak. He knew that strength sometimes needed quiet to settle. Valeria finally looked at him, her eyes soft but steady. There was gratitude there, but also pride. She had held herself together when it mattered most. Esteban smiled gently, not as a man who had just revealed his status, but as a partner who had witnessed courage. He reminded her that she had done nothing wrong, that her calm in the face of cruelty was something no amount of money could buy. As they walked down the sidewalk together, Valeria reflected on why she had chosen that life, that job. She had wanted to remember the reality of people, to stay connected to humility while building a future few knew about. She had wanted to measure herself not by titles, but by integrity. What happened in the restaurant did not erase that choice. It confirmed it. Behind them, the restaurant slowly returned to its rhythm, but something subtle had changed. A few staff members stood taller. A few guests spoke more softly. Witnessing dignity had reminded them of their own. The incident became more than a moment of shame. It became a quiet lesson carried home by strangers. That afternoon, Valeria did not see herself as a victim. She saw herself as a woman who had faced disrespect without becoming it. She understood that kindness did not always arrive loudly, and justice did not always demand punishment. Sometimes it simply demanded truth, and somewhere deep within her, a quiet certainty grew stronger. No matter where life placed her, no matter how others chose to see her, she would never again doubt her own worth. The world might be quick to judge by uniforms and appearances, but character always revealed itself in the end. And when it did, it spoke louder than torn fabric, louder than arrogance, and louder than silence ever could.